and we wanted to do something. And has anybody actually read through the Ramakrishna book called Essentials of Puja, the Ramakrishna Puja book? Anybody's gone through that at all? One person. If you go through that book, it's a little bit complicated, and to try to understand it and to follow it. So what happened as a result is we created something simple. It has the basic outline, essentials of what every puja has, and yet then it's simple enough that we can all follow and we can all do. And puja is a practice that you continue to do over and over and over again. And as you do it, it's a spiritual practice that puts you in contact with the divine. So I like to do things, I'm a very informal type of person, and I like to do things more in discussion groups. So what I'm going to do today is I'll give you a little bit of the overall philosophy of what puja is, what happens in puja, because many of you probably have gone to pujas, and we'll just cover some of the basics of what you see is happening in a puja. And then we'll take a little break, and we'll set up then, during the break, we'll set these little puja kits up, use the restroom, and then we'll come back and we'll actually do the puja ourselves. We're going to do a simplified version of it. All right? So, let's start, let me ask you, what does puja mean to you? I see most everybody's Indian, except for one person that I know.
Jonathan, you're representing all the...
So, I know as part of being Indian, you're led to go to pujas whether you like it or not, as a child or not. So, what does puja mean to you? When you see it, what do you think of puja? How many do puja in their own homes? Their own private pujas? So, majority of you do some type of worship then. Okay. So, what do you do? What does puja mean? What does it mean? When we do puja?
Ceremony?
Huh?
Ceremony?
A sermon.
A ceremony.
Ceremony, okay. What kind of ceremony?
Like a devotional ceremony.
A devotional ceremony. Yeah, good. You were going to say something.
We are doing Archana to connect ourselves with God.
To connect ourselves with God. Yes. Yeah, that's yes. It's a connection, just like meditation, just like karma yoga. Puja is considered part of the bhakti yoga process. By bhakti yoga, I mean through devotion. And so through this devotion, what do you think the difference between puja is and say something like doing meditation, doing japa? What's the difference? And what's different about puja as compared to any other spiritual practice?
There is some amount of rituals.
Okay.
We sometimes do. And the other is, at least for me, puja typically involves a deity or a symbol of God, tangible.
Right.
And then as part of the ritual, whether I'm doing it or not all the time, we sometimes offer things.
Mm-hmm.
Besides the classical one that I should give my heart to you, my God, but more tangible things like maybe an incense stick or other things. And the fourth thing is, sometimes some of us chant mantras or special words.
Good. So in one sense here, you're saying, yes, go ahead.
Also in puja, I think all the senses.
Yes. Yes. You see, in puja, you're using all the senses. Whereas compared to doing something like japa or meditation, you're not using all your senses. So what that means is, puja is sort of a practice which is easier to connect ourselves with God. There's sometimes what happens is what we find is that, I was just discussing this during lunch, when we come back from work and we're expected to meditate, we can find it very difficult because our mind's been racing in one direction. It's like you're going 60 miles an hour, and then you're asking the mind to stop, completely put on the brakes, and then focus on God. Usually what happens when our mind is so busy, and when we try to meditate, our mind curves off in so many different directions. And then by the time our half an hour is over, or 15 minutes over, our mind has gone everywhere else except to the divine. So sometimes what happens is easier when you're going 60 miles an hour, if you're driving a stick shift, you don't, or if you're going, what happens? You don't go from 5th gear to 1st gear. You go from 5th gear to what? To 4th gear, to 3rd gear, to 2nd gear. So in this sense, when our mind is so active, one of the best things to do is sometimes do a little worship, because it engages all your senses. It's taking your scattered mind and beginning to make it focused. What actually, traditionally, sometimes after puja, what comes next is prayer, prarthana. It's taking that unfocused mind, which is very scattered, using your senses to focus it. And then when it's somewhat focused, now let me start offering my heart to the divine through prayer, through verbal prayer. And as my prayer gets more and more solid, it drops off into japa. By simply the word ma, 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 it's uttering the meaning of the prayer that I've been chanting. And then when that word, as the mind becomes even more focused and more silent, then the words drop off. And then you're just experiencing the divine. This is what we call dhyana, meditation. And in that way, it now becomes much easier to meditate. So you can think of sometimes the worship sometimes is a good way to begin your meditative process. Is that clear? If you have any questions, I like to engage in dialogue. So if you have, let's not make any formalities here. So let's just go over a little bit about what puja is. This is something I did back in, I think, 2008. So it's I'll remember as I do it. But puja, as we know it, puja literally means adoration, devotion. It's showing our adoration to the divine. What happened yesterday, remember we talked yesterday a little bit about Indian families, how sometimes in Westerners we can see how love is being expressed, but if you're an Indian kid growing up here, it's difficult to understand how love is being expressed. Today we're going to learn a little bit about the language of love for the divine. So through mudras, through offering, we're going to be expressing the love language to our beloved. Okay? And this is the language of love to the divine. So another way. And so when we think of, I'll give you an example, mudras. Yesterday, what did we say mudras were? Gestures, physical gestures.
Or what we are feeling.
Huh?
For what we are feeling inside.
For what we're feeling inside. So normally mudras, then when you see these deities, you'll see they have different mudras, like abhaya, or the feeling. There's a mudra called the Mriga mudra we learned yesterday, right? So these are mudras that when you get these high expressions of the divine, the hands normally contour, they're expressed. Your state of mind is expressed in these through your hands like this. And they represent your state of mind. So in puja, why do we make these mudras? We're going to reverse engineer. We're going to try to create that state of mind by physically doing the mudras. By physically doing the mudras, we're going to try to elevate our state of mind. Whereas usually, the mudras you see are naturally the expressions of the divine at those high levels of mental states. Understand? Okay, so puja, any puja that you look at will have these three things: purification, invocation, and worship. And I would say maybe about 60 to 70%, when you see a puja going on, 70% of the time is purification. There's a lot of things to purify. Invocation is invoking the presence of the divine within you, and invoking the divine presence everywhere around you. And then offering is the last thing, where we're offering the divine, what we call food, incense, flowers, things like that. And it's an expression of our love. So, I'm just going to go through this really quickly because there's a lot. We're not going to get bogged down by the details. Today is really about doing this. The way you transform is by doing. So, preparations. You clean the puja area. Traditionally, there's the. Actually, I have my notes here. Traditionally, there's the idea of sitting. What does it say? East or north? East. Yeah, north is because of the rising sun. It's a sign of knowledge, and east, I forget why east here.
East is facing the rising sun.
East is facing the rising sun, and north is the compass, the needle of a compass goes towards the north. So there's a certain alignment that we think we're directed towards the divine. Then after that, we do what's called Achamana. Achamana is purification of the mouth. So purify your mouth because we're going to be uttering these sacred mantras. And what do you do here next? Next is prayer, Prarthana. And so before that, we actually are going to close off our senses. And so you'll see that we're going to be touching our eyes, our nose, our ears. We're going to be closing off our awareness, which is focusing out to the world, is now we're going to be focusing towards the divine. So we're going to be focusing we're going to be reorienting our awareness inside, closing the senses, and then prayer. And here, in the Ramakrishna order, we pray for everybody's fulfillment. Through this prayer, we make what's called a sankalpa. What's a sankalpa? Anybody?
Law.
Huh?
Law.
Resolution.
A resolution, yes. So here, this is where, if you go to like other pujas, there's some kalpas. I want my kid to get into a good college. I want to get money. If you pay like someone an acharya. Here, our sankalpa in the Ramakrishna order is it's the affirmation, the purpose of why we're doing this puja. And the purpose in the Ramakrishna order is to awaken our spirituality, to increase our love and devotion for the divine, and to bring goodness onto everyone. So in our pujas, it's a more spiritual exercise as opposed to wanting anything worldly. And then we have this Saman Argya, and here we use water for the puja. And so we're going to sanctify that water. We're going to invoke the 7 sacred rivers into the water. And the 7 sacred rivers, we have Saraswati, Narmada, they represent 7 sacred deities. And the idea is that we're invoking these, like say, Ganga, the goddess Ganga. What does Ganga mean?
Knowledge.
No, not knowledge. That's good, but not that one. So when we normally think Ganga, it's the power of purification. So we're invoking the power of purity into this water. When we talk about knowledge, we're also invoking Saraswati. That's the power of knowledge into this. Yamuna. We used to have, during traditional times, we had saints that would practice tapasya on the banks of Yamuna. So we're invoking that tapasya into the water. So we're invoking the deities which all have a different power into that sacred water. Another reason why we're invoking the mantras into the water is because water is a good carrier of vibration. So when we invoke the mantras into the water becomes the mantra itself. And so you'll notice that when we take a flower and we're sprinkling the water into different things, we're actually not sprinkling water, we're sprinkling the mantra to purify the different places that we're sprinkling it onto. So that's why we're using the sacred water there. And here normally, you see that's called the koshakushi. That's where we pour our water into. The koshakushi, I was told, resembles a divine womb, the womb of the Divine Mother. And usually on the, who's the gatekeeper of the Divine Mother? Shiva? No! Who did Shiva have to go through to get to Parvati? Ganesha. Right. So normally, it's not shown in this picture, but normally we have a red flower. Red flowers are usually what's used to worship Ganesha at the neck, at the very top. This is a yellow flower, but it should actually be red. Because he's the gatekeeper. We have to go through Ganesha to get to there. So that's normally what we do. The next thing here, what we do is, traditionally in puja, then we make salutations to our spiritual lineage. And what this is basically we're connecting ourselves back to the source. First to the guru. What does guru mean? Anybody?
The one who dispels, darkness or ignorance.
Yes, the one who removes darkness. Right, guru. Yes, and gives us knowledge. So usually the idea is that if we have a teacher, we salute our teacher. You'll see that there'll be something like Om Guru Pyo Namaha, Om Aim Guru Pyo Namaha, Om Aim Para Guru Pyo Namaha. So we're worshiping that continuity. We all come of spiritual lineage. The reason why in India spirituality works is because it's living. It's passed down from one generation to the next generation, but it's a living spirituality. So we were in the Ramakrishna order, we're very close to the source, which is Ramakrishna. He's considered the guru of gurus. And so here we'll worship the guru, we'll worship the guru's guru, all gurus, then the supreme guru. And then once we've created a pathway, connected ourselves to the source, we want to make sure that there are no obstacles that come in now once the pathway is created. So then we worship Ganesha to keep that pathway clear. But just to show that, how many actually here have been initiated into the Ramakrishna tradition, have been initiated in our... So about half. Okay, no problem. Then what's next here is... then we have the place. Now we are talking about... so now it's about the fivefold purification. So now what I told you is that we have to purify, when we're doing worship, we're purifying the environment. Not only the environment, we're going to purify the mantras, we're going to purify the puja articles, we're going to purify the symbol that we're worshiping. If it's a picture of Ramakrishna or Mother, we're going to purify that, and then we're going to purify ourselves. Right? So everything will be purified. What, in one sense, what we're doing is we're reorientating how we see the world. We are a sacred being. Actually, we're a divine being, living in a divine world. When Ramakrishna was alive, he would see everything was manifesting the expression of the divine. He would see, it's difficult to understand what he would see, but the idea is he would see like a light, consciousness, shining behind everything. When he was doing the puja, he would see all the puja articles sort of as God in all the puja articles. Remember, he was doing puja, and then all of a sudden he saw God in the cat. He's worshiping the cat. He's feeding the cat. So the idea is that there's a consciousness that is shining in and through, and each of us are just different expressions of that consciousness. Sort of like consciousness is the ocean, and each of you is a different wave that's manifesting from that ocean. And if you have the eyes to see, the divine chakshu, you can see beyond the form that there's a divine light, a divinity that's shining in and through. And on the surface is this name and form. And so the idea here is that everything is conscious. And so that's why you'll see that sometimes we even worship the doorway. There's a deity in this doorway. And we're going to worship the deity. The idea of having deities in this sense is that it gives us the idea that everything is consciousness, everything is living, and everything should be respected. Remember Holy Mother said, with the broom, what did she say about the broom? What did she say? Do you remember?
Everything has its own place. Be respectful.
Yes, there's a sacred awareness about the broom. Treat the broom with respect. It's not just a broom. It has a function, but it's also consciousness manifesting in this broom. So the idea is that everything is living. Everything is pulsating. Everything is vibrating. And if you can get from the physical to the subtle, you'd see the vibration. Everything has a spanda. And everything is vibrating. And sometimes we talk about, in the subtle level, there's 50 alphabets, Sanskrit alphabets, and this is all, at one point in the puja, the alphabets, the 50 letters come from the crown, the nectar of your head, and go and are placed into different parts of your body. They all have a different function, vibrating at a different expression, and they all have a different power. So the idea now is that we're living in a sacred universe, and we ourselves are sacred. So we're going to try to uncover that sacredness that is here. So that's why we do all this purification. And so the first thing is to purify the place. And if you have your own shrine, that means that part of your house should be kept clean. Okay? Cleanliness. So it should be clean because if it's scattered in any way, you may notice this. If your room is scattered, do you notice your mind? So one Swami said, your bedroom is an expression of your own mind. If your mind is scattered, then your bedroom is scattered. When you're in the mood of sattva, you feel that you want everything to be in order, everything to be in place. When I was with Swami Sharvadevanandaji Maharaj, you should see his room. Everything is perfect. Everything in its place. And if one thing goes out of place, he'll tell you. He feels like something's out of alignment. Put the pen back in this place. So when you're in tamasic mood, lethargy, then your whole room, the bed's not made, all the books are out of place, everything. That's just the state of our mind. So at least one portion in our house, we're going to try to create a sattvic vibration in that house. So that when you enter into that part of the place, even if your mind is feeling tamasic, rajasic, once you enter into that space, once we enter into this puja hall, all of a sudden our mind tends to be organized. It's in harmony. And we feel a sense of peace, orderliness within us. So that's the idea, basically, purifying the place, and then.
So now we're going to remove the Mudras.
This is Gita Prana, talking about the subtle vibrations in the room. Okay.
And as one person who just said, we were just talking about this the other day with my friend Sam Collins here. We see a plane that we see, but that does not mean there are other planes of beings. And it does not mean that there aren't other beings that like to come to places where God is worshipped. And some beings you want to welcome, and other ones you don't. And so this little offering is meant to keep the positive, what would we call them, the imps and the pixies, happy. So you pick up the rice in what they call Zaracha Mudra, and it looks like this. And you count on your left hand seven times with this kind of obstacle removing mantra, Astraya Pat again. So you say Astraya Pat, Astraya Pat, Astraya Pat, Astraya Pat, Astraya Pat, Astraya Pat, Astraya Pat. And you sprinkle the rice all around you. Say, oh, may the earthbound spirits and the spirits who create obstacles be merged in Lord Shiva. So you can do this, but I also, and often, it doesn't say that in the script, but almost always, and that's to keep the pixies and the imps happy so they don't mess with the puja. Because they will.
So, she's our nun originally in New York. But the idea here is that as we're starting to go into the subtle vibration, our subtle presence, that we start to pick up more vibration. And so we want to purify any negative vibration that may be in the room, any negative energy that may be in the place. So we will give offerings, and not rice in this case, but water or flowers, as a way to offset the negative vibrations that may be here. Then we purify the mantra, and so we're going to purify the mantras that we're going to use. So as we purify the mantras, we're going to also chant them in certain places of our mouth, of our vocal organ. And so from the bottom portion to the top portion to the upper part of our mouth to the lips, what we're doing is we're purifying this whole vocal organ so that it's also pure. We're going to purify every aspect. Remember, I told you, Puja is about 60% purification. So we're going to purify every aspect of our environment and of ourselves. And then also we're going to purify the Puja utensils that we're using. Because, again, everything is divine. So we're going to create a sacred awareness. These vessels are being used to worship the divine. We didn't talk about even Puja also is inviting the divine God, infinite, to come to our place. And so in doing this, we are changing the whole environment. We are changing ourselves so that the divine presence can come and be present, so that we can adore the divine. So we're worshiping the Puja articles, and then even the symbol that we're using for worship, we're going to purify that by offering some water and chanting some mantras. And the idea is to reconnect what we see, the image we see, to connect it with the infinite. So it's to reconnect ourselves with the infinite. So it's a purification of the symbol. And here, probably at the heart of worship, many Swamis will consider is this aspect, purification of the worshipper. And what we call this is Buddha Shuddhi. Buddha Shuddhi means purifying the elements that create you. We have a physical body, we have a subtle body, which is our mind, we have a causal body. Just very quickly, what is the physical body?
Gross body.
What's that?
Gross body.
The gross body. Oh, what? Food body. Okay, like your Annamaya Kosha. Right. Anybody else? Okay. So basically, this gross body entails the senses, right? How do we experience the world? Through the senses. It's the only way we experience the world, through the senses. So we're going to be purifying the senses. We're going to be purifying our gross body. What's the next? What's after the gross body? What's behind, or what's more subtle than the gross body? What's that?
Subtle body.
The subtle body. What's the subtle body consist of? The mind. And within the mind, what are the aspects of the mind?
Ego, intellect.
Yes, manas, chitta, buddhi, ahankara. Okay? And so we might as well just do a little review of this. When you talk about this, when Swami really explained it, I think, nicely, when you talk about, these are one mind functioning in these four ways, right? The same mind. And when we mean manas, that Swami is describing that we're receiving information through our senses, through the five senses, right? And what is happening? All of that is coming into into an aspect of our mind which is processing all that information. And manas is what we call when it's operating in manas, it means tuning. It's tuning the information. It's a tuner, like a TV tuner. It's getting all these signals and creating one cohesive picture, right? And then what happens is, the next thing is, we want to know what this information means. We see something, we may see a person, we may see a person doing something. Say I say you. Then I'm questioning, what is that person? Who is that person? So when the mind starts going into the questioning process, who is this? Who is this? It's acting as the chitta, functioning as the chitta. Then, when it comes to a decision, I don't know who this person is, okay? This is Hari. That's when we say the buddhi is functioning. So here's the mind now playing the role of the buddhi. This is before. Who is this? I see this person with a blue t-shirt. Okay, I know it is. I match him up in my memory banks. It is Hari. Then the ahankara comes into the process and says, what does Hari mean to me? And if Hari was good to me, then I move towards, I want to go say hello to Hari. Then the ahankara, so I ask, what does it mean to me? And then through my karmendriyas, I go and react out, response out. We have information coming in, we have a response out. All this is happening within the mind. And what we're going to do is in the puja, is we're going to purify our mind. So say Hari treated me really badly and I have a lot of negative energy towards Hari. We're going to purify that aspect of my mind so when I see Hari, I see him as he is. I don't think about it from the past. I don't see what he can help me in the future. I just see that this is a person, he's just a person here. And he's sitting quietly. I'm the observer without coloring my mind. So we're going to, purification here is discoloring our mind, cleaning our mind. Okay? So here it says purification, Buddha Shuddhi is purifying the elements. And the other reason why we do this is to worship the divine, you yourself have to become divine. And there's a saying, Devo Bhutva, Devam Yajet. Having worshipped God, worshiping God, one should become divine to worship the divine. And so the idea here is that to truly know about your beloved, you have to become that divine itself. We used to say only two, who can come in love? Really, love is between one of the same species. Humans can truly love other humans. Dogs can truly love other dogs. So to truly love the divine, you have to raise yourself to that divine consciousness. Not the material consciousness that I'm a body loving the divine. I am an expression of you. If you are my mother, the divine, you have given me birth. I'm a part of you. As a part of you, I am the divine. And now, as I raise myself to the divine, then I'm going to worship you as the divine. And so here, we talked about basically that in the worship, what's happening is that your subtle and causal bodies are all cluttered up with your past experiences, what we call samskaras. So the idea of this Buddha Shuddhi is to incinerate, to burn all the previous the software within your system, and then to recreate a new software, the divine software, so that you can see the divine in its real living divine form. So again, you're becoming divine to worship divine. And then also now, you're invoking the presence of God in your heart. So before we even worship God out there, we're first invoking the divine presence within us. And then we'll see that we bring that divine presence out, and then we worship. And
what you're basically doing here is you're dying. You're removing through the chakra system all the elements of the 5 elements of the world and all the associations of sense organs to elements until there's nothing left of you. And they say this is how the dying process happens. Through, hopefully, a withdrawal from each sense until you merge it into the 1,000-petal lotus at the top of your head. And there is just pure consciousness. And what you're doing is you're taking off your body and you're taking on a divine consciousness. So in the Buddha Shuddhi, what you're doing is you're uniting your human consciousness to the divine consciousness in the 1,000-petal lotus. And the mantra for that is from the basic center through the path of the Shushumna. I raise the individual spirit and unite it with the Supreme Spirit in the center of the brain. The subtle body is burned up, the causal body is burned up. Oh, thou Supreme Spirit, light up the path as the Shushumna from the basic center. May there be illumination, may there be illumination, I am me. So once you've taken off, once you've died, and now you're a subtle existence, you're reincarnating yourself as a deity. And the idea is this very tantric idea that is, you are a divine person in a divine world. And so you've made this world already divine, this worship area, and by going through the various elements, now you're going to reincarnate yourself as the deity that you're worshiping. And no matter who it is, if it's Ramakrishna, you incarnate yourself as Ramakrishna. If it's Kali, you incarnate yourself as Kali. And there's a whole process for doing that, and that's called Myasa.
So in this Buddha Shuddhi process, it'll be a meditation. And you'll see that what we're doing is we're going to take our consciousness, we're going to go down to our Muladhara chakra, and we're going to raise our Kundalini, sort of chakra by chakra, till we get to our divine, till we get to one with the infinite, the Sahasrara. And then from the infinite, we're going to feel that a crown of the divine consciousness, the nectar, the amrita of this divinity is going to flow in and through us and go into our body, recreate our hands, and we'll feel the experience of that divinity, that spiritual, that new spiritual body. And with that new spiritual body, now we're going to worship we feel there this individualized consciousness. No longer are we body, no longer are we mind. We are now this individualized consciousness, sometimes referred as the Jivatman. Now the idea is to worship the Paramatman, the Supreme Spirit. Okay? This is the process here, the idea here. And then after that, we talk about, then we're going to invoke the that divinity, the infinite, Ishtadevata is that chosen ideal, that aspect of the divine that we connect to. So there's, as we know, there's the one divine presence. And that divine presence can come in so many different forms, in so many different qualities. Why do they do that? Why in my class, when I went to Hinduism class, they said there's 333 million gods in the Hindu tradition. You may have heard this. Why do you think they chose? Why 333 million?
It's the population.
Because the population was 333 million. Each of us has our own unique way to approaching the divine. So and the divine is infinite. And so what we're seeing here is that aspect, the qualities that we have within us, whether it's the qualities of we're introspective and meditative and we're detached, maybe it's the qualities of Shiva, and we see the infinite, we feel an affinity towards the infinite in the form of Shiva, the qualities of Shiva. Or maybe we're bhaktas, we like to dance, we like to sing, we like to shout, we like to show our love, to the divine through these ways. Maybe it's Krishna. So in whatever way you relate to the divine, that's what we call your Ishtadevata, your chosen ideal. And the beauty sometimes what we find in Ramakrishna is Ramakrishna, we discussed yesterday, can morph onto many different forms and has many different qualities. So no matter what qualities or form you're looking for, you can find it within him. That's one way of looking at it. So that's the Ishtadevata. And here then I talked about Myasa. So sometimes what you'll see is that after the Pujari, you'll see them putting worshipping, they do the Buddha Shuddhi, they're invoking creating this divine body. Then out of that, the Amrita, the divine nectar, it's like 50 alphabet, 50 mantrikas, letters of the Sanskrit alphabet come, and each letter corresponds to a different place in the body. And this is what we call Myasa. Myasa means to place. It also means to remove. We're removing the material elements and replacing the divine elements. So you'll see the Swami sometimes touching their hands, chanting different mantras, demonizing their different body into a divine. And then finally, traditionally, before we do the main worship, we do a worship to these five divines, Panchadevatas. And why Panchadevatas is because, as I understand, Shankaracharya, the great scholar and great, we sometimes will say an incarnation, the divine, about 8th century AD. Basically, we had different schools of thought, different systems of thought, and he wanted to give respect to all systems. So there's the Ganapatis, there's the Shivas, Suryas, there's the Vishnu, like Krishna, Narayana, and then the worshippers of the Shakti. So we salute all different traditions. And we'll see that each of them also has different meanings. So we give honor to the different traditions, and then, I think this is So first we normally worship the Guru, and then we'll worship the different aspects of the divine, as you see here. So Ganesha can be thought as the ultimate reality that removes the obstacles, gives us success. Surya is the ultimate reality to illumine the sun, to illumine our path, gives us energy. Shiva, the ultimate reality to give us renunciation of worldly things and redirecting our consciousness towards the goal. And Vishnu is to give us love, to connect us, to bring us closer to the divine. And the Shakti element is to give us the expressing itself as mother, is to give us the power and feel her embrace. So after worshiping the 5 aspects of the divine, then we do what's called offerings. Then we meditate then on our Ishtadevata. Okay? So in this case, because we're in the Ramakrishna order, we're going to the Ishtadevata will be Sri Ramakrishna. And so there's a Ramakrishna meditation. I had chanted some of it yesterday. And in the meditation, we're seeing Ramakrishna, we're seeing the three different aspects of Ramakrishna. What was the first aspect describing? You remember yesterday?
Transcendental.
What?
Advaitic Brahman.
Yes, the transcendental aspect of our consciousness as Brahman. So the same Ramakrishna that we see as Brahman, in the second stanza, what does it describe him as?
Ishvara.
Ishvara. Ishvara, remember, one who's extremely subtle, who's the infinite dwelling within all beings. So that's it. And what is Ishvara?
Personal God.
The personal God, yes. The consciousness that's within the universe. The consciousness that we pray to. The consciousness that responds to us. Remember we said that? When we think about the God, the divine, there's actually 5 different ways you can think about the divine. Here's 3 basic ways. The divine as the infinite reality, Brahman. When we think of Brahman, we're thinking of one's own essential nature. I am that. You are that. When you remove all your qualifications, all your qualities, strip away everything you are, you go back to the source of who you are. You are the ocean, not the wave. Then, if you think of yourself as the wave, then you want to, as a consciousness, then you want to have a relationship with the divine. And so you're praying to that infinite consciousness that pervades this entire universe, Ishvara. And then the last stanza describes Ramakrishna as the avatar, right? As the avatar is one who's born to bring knowledge, whose heart melts at the sufferings of other, for whom samadhi was his natural state, right? So these are the 3 different aspects of Ramakrishna that we describe and that we meditate on. And then the idea is then, when you're bringing the divine into this space, the idea is that then we treat the divine as an honored guest. And so the offerings are meant to how to treat that person as an honored guest. And so we give different aspects. We'll offer here flowers, incense, candles, food. And behind the offerings, I just want to say, Swami Sarvati even gave a nice idea. When someone was offering food, he said that, someone asked him a question. He said, well, does Ramakrishna really take the food? Because it looks like the food is the same before and after. What does he do? And Swami Sarvati even gave a nice analogy. He took a piece of bread and had some jam on it. And he said, you know what it does? And he said, Ramakrishna takes the jam, and he took it and he licked the jam from the bread, like this. He says, what happens is this: is anything that you're offering, whether it's food, what's happening in the process of making food? You're making the food, but then you're coating it. You're coating it with what? The jam of your devotion, the jam of your love. And so what happens is, what the divine takes, it's not so much the material element. It's that subtle element of love that's there. And then what you get back is his prasad. So that's the key. And if there's no love in what you're offering, then he's going on a diet. All right? So the idea is then you have to, whatever you're doing, Krishna said, whether you offer me a leaf, water, a flower, it doesn't matter. Do it with love. That's what I accept. And after the offering, then we have arati. So arati, sometimes what we offer in arati is done at the end of the day, and it's a way here we offer light, and traditionally conch, cloth, flower, a fan, and the bell. And the idea here is that each of these can be an element, or it represents also an experience. So the fire, the light we offer, is symbolic of our sight. Whatever I've seen today, I offer to you. The conch, which has the water, is symbolic of taste. Whatever I've consumed today, I offer to you. The cloth is symbolic of sound. Why sound? This is a question that I asked. The cloth represents the akasha element, the space element. And where does sound travel through? Through space. So that's how it goes back. And so whatever I've heard today, I offer back to you. The flower, symbolic of smell. Whatever I've smelled today, I offer to you. And the fan is symbolic of touch. Whatever I felt today, I offer to you. And the mind is constantly going on in the background. The mind is what, without the mind, we can't register any experience. So the experience may be coming through the five senses, but unless it's registered through the mind, it doesn't exist. So whatever I've experienced within my mind, whatever thoughts I get, I offer back to you. And the idea is that everything I've done today, everything is offered back to you. All I want is to feel your presence. And ultimately, puja can be thought of as upasana. Upa-asana. Upasana sometimes we think is meditation. Asana means sitting. Upa means near. As you do worship, you discover you're getting near and near and near to that divine. Until, like in the case of Ramakrishna, he would see things and then things he would merge into things until you merge into the divine. And when you merge into the divine, what happens? Nobody can say. Who's there to say? There is no subject, there is no object, there's no experiencer, there's no experience, there's no experiencing. It's just is. So this is the object of puja, is to get yourself, to bring yourself closer and closer to feel that divine presence. I'll end off here also saying that another idea is that the more you do this, the more you start to feel this Vijnani. Do you know what Vijnani is? You've heard the term Vijnani? What is Vijnani? Ramakrishna would say, the culmination ultimately is not Jnana, but Vijnana. What does Vijnana mean?
Science.
What?
Vijnana.
Oh, so it means science. Okay, yes, that's true. But here, in the definition that Ramakrishna is using it.
One who analyzes.
What?
One who analyzes.
One who analyzes. Okay, so, but here, the Jnani is knowledge. The V here is a special. So it's a special type of knowledge. So what is that special type of knowledge? You go ahead. Experienced knowledge. Okay?
Seeing the same divine everywhere.
Seeing the same divine everywhere. Yes. So ultimately, what Ramakrishna brought that you could say is sort of different. Whether Vijnani was a term before Ramakrishna had come, I'm not sure. Sometimes it's been cited in the Gita, but whether it's in this reference, usually we think the culmination is the experience of you merging into your infinite nature, and then when you're merged into Brahman. And that is the highest experience. But is that the final experience? One Swami used to tell you that you have Dvaita, then you have Vishishta Dvaita, where you're a part and you see everything as the whole. Then the highest is Advaita, Jnana. Okay? But then, what we see in Ramakrishna's life is after experiencing the highest knowledge, able to come back now, and not only that infinite that he experienced at the Jnani state, he experiences the same thing as the Vijnani. In the Vijnani, he's experienced not only is Brahman, do I see that the infinite is divine, in this nirvikalpa state, without kalpa, without mentation, I also come down and I can see the same divinity and recognize the same divinity in the world. It's seeing God in the world. That there's no sense of separation. Everything, there's one consciousness. And everything is an expression of that consciousness. And when you get in that experience, then you feel such joy. You recognize everything is just the play of the divine. And you are the divine. The divine playing in the divine. So this is the specialty we see of Sri Ramakrishna, the Vijnani. So that's the ultimate goal, I think, of the puja process. To recognize that this universe is nothing but the expression of the divine. I am nothing but the expression of the divine. All of this is to be able to purify mind so that I can experience that. Okay? So, why don't we end up here, and then we'll just take a little bit of a break now, because now then we're going to actually do the puja. All right? And so we're going to do it in a simplified way, and if you like it, I will send what I'm doing. I'll send the materials, this puja booklet. I'll send it to PDF to you guys, and then whoever wants it, you can send it out and use it, and it's something that you can practice again and again. All right? So let's just take a little bit of a break, and then let's say, what time is it now?